Nita had been looking for a fresh start, a new job, a new city, and finally, an apartment she could afford. It wasn't anything fancy, just a quiet little place on the third floor of an old building tucked away in a peaceful corner of town. The landlord was polite, the neighbors kept to themselves, and the rent was strangely low. Honestly, it felt like a lucky break. Too lucky. The first few days were uneventful. Nita unpacked, set up her new space, and started settling into a routine. But it didn't take long before little things began to feel off. At night, she'd hear faint knocking sounds coming from the walls. Once, she even heard footsteps pacing in the hallway outside her door, long after everyone should have been asleep. She told herself it was just the old building making noises, nothing unusual, but deep down she felt something wasn't right. One evening, she returned home to find her bedroom window open. She was sure she had locked it before leaving. Another night, the light in the kitchen flickered non-stop, even though the bulb was new. Still, she tried to ignore it. She didn't want to seem paranoid, but then she started having the same dream every night, standing in her apartment, unable to move, while something stood silently in the corner, watching her. She tried to brush it off. Maybe it was stress. Maybe her mind was just playing tricks. But the uneasiness kept growing. Then one night, while cleaning, she found something hidden behind the wardrobe. Something old. Something personal. It didn't belong to her. And it looked like it hadn't been touched in years. That's when she realized she wasn't the first person to live in this apartment. And maybe she wasn't the only one living there now. Nita stared at the item in her hands, a small leather-bound diary covered in dust. It had fallen behind the wardrobe when she was sweeping. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the handwriting inside was still clear. At first, she thought it might belong to the previous tenant, but the first page made her pause. It was dated 5 years ago, and the name signed at the bottom wasn't familiar. Zara Ahmed. She flipped through the pages, her curiosity growing with every line. It wasn't a typical diary. Zara hadn't written about daily life, or friends, or work. Instead, the entries became more unsettling with each page. Notes about cold spots in the room, furniture shifting slightly overnight, and whispers coming from the ceiling. One entry described how Zara had found small objects moving from place to place, as if someone else was living in the apartment with her, someone she never saw. Nita looked around the room, suddenly feeling like she wasn't alone. Later that evening, she asked the landlord casually if he remembered who lived in the apartment before her. He hesitated, then said, "Oh, lots of people. It's been empty on and off. People come and go. You know how it is." But his eyes didn't match his voice. There was something he wasn't saying. Back in her apartment, Nita couldn't shake the feeling that Zara had left in a hurry. She searched online for her name but found nothing. No social media, no records, no sign that she had ever existed. It was like she had disappeared completely. That night, the dream returned. But this time, the figure in the corner moved. Slowly. Nida woke up gasping, drenched in sweat, the room colder than usual. When she reached for the light switch, it clicked, but the bulb didn't turn on. The next morning, she noticed the diary was gone. It wasn't where she left it. She searched everywhere, under the bed, behind the wardrobe again, even in the kitchen drawers. Nothing, as if it had vanished, just like Zara. Nida now knew the apartment wasn't normal. Something was wrong, something had happened here, and it wasn't finished yet. Nida started keeping a journal of her own. If Zara had left clues behind, maybe she could do the same, just in case. Every strange sound, flickering light, or cold shiver, she wrote down. The apartment felt different now, like it was listening. Even during the day, when the sun lit up the tiny living room and the city sounds filtered in through the window, there was a tension in the air, like something hidden, waiting. One afternoon, she noticed something carved faintly into the wooden frame of the bathroom mirror. It was barely visible under the chipped paint. 4 small lines crossed by a fifth, like tally marks. She ran her fingers over them, then began checking the rest of the apartment. She found more. Behind the curtain rod, under the sink, inside the closet door, always grouped in 5s. What were they counting? Meanwhile, she tried to get to know the neighbors, hoping someone might know something. The woman in 3B, Sana, was friendly but guarded. When Nita asked about Zara or past tenants, Sana grew quiet. "This building is old," she said, almost in a whisper. "People don't stay long. You shouldn't ask too many questions." But Nita couldn't stop. She needed answers. That night, she had a vivid dream. Zara was standing in the hallway, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't speak, but she raised her hand and pointed to the corner of Nita's room, the same one from the dreams. When Nita woke, she couldn't bring herself to look there. Not right away. Later, she finally built up the courage. She stepped into the corner and tapped on the wall. Hollow. She knocked again, louder. A soft thud came back, like someone was knocking from the other side. That's when she knew. There was something, or someone, behind that wall. She grabbed her phone, opened the flashlight, and started feeling along the edges. Near the floor, just above the baseboard, her fingers found a loose panel. She pulled, and it gave way with a quiet creak. Inside was a hidden space, barely a foot deep, and resting in the darkness was something wrapped in old cloth. Her hands shook as she reached for it, heart pounding. But before she could unwrap it, she heard a sound behind her. Breathing, slow, steady, and much too close. Nita froze. She didn't dare turn around. The sound of breathing behind her was soft but unmistakable, slow, raspy, like someone had been standing there for a while. Her flashlight flickered, casting strange, jumping shadows across the wall. The air in the apartment had gone completely still, heavy, like it was pressing down on her. Her fingers still gripped the old cloth, but she couldn't move. She wasn't sure if it was fear or something else, like the apartment itself didn't want her to. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the breathing stopped. Nita spun around, heart hammering in her chest. No one was there. The room was empty, but the tension hadn't gone away. In fact, it felt worse. She looked down at the bundle in her hands, unwrapped it slowly, layer by layer. Inside was a box, small, wooden, and locked with an old brass latch. She turned it over, finding initials carved into the bottom. Zia, Zara Ahmed. There was no key. She tucked it away, deciding she needed help. She returned to Sana's apartment and knocked, this time not hiding the fear on her face. Sana opened the door, took one look at her, and sighed. "Come in." Sana poured tea, and for the first time she spoke honestly. "I've lived here for 7 years. I've seen people come and go, but some of them, they don't go far." She looked at Nita with tired eyes. Zara wasn't the first. Before her there was a man named Yasir. Before him, a student named Rehan. They all reported the same things. Whispers, shadows, dreams. "Did you ever hear anything yourself?" Nita asked. Sana nodded. "At first, but I learned not to listen. It's like the building feeds on fear. The more you notice, the stronger it becomes. That's why I stay quiet." Nita told her about the hidden space, the tally marks, the diary, the box. Sana went pale when she saw it. Whatever's in there, it doesn't want to be found. Later that night, Nita sat in her room staring at the box. Her thoughts raced. Was it connected to whatever haunted the apartment? Was it the reason Zara vanished? Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You found it. Now you need to finish what I couldn't." She dropped the phone. Her pulse quickened. Who sent that? Zara? Someone pretending to be her? Or was this something much worse? The lights flickered. Her door creaked open slowly, though she hadn't touched it. And then, a whisper. So close, it felt like it came from inside her own head. "Don't open it." But it was too late. The latch had already clicked open in her trembling hands. The box creaked open with a sound that echoed far louder than it should have in the small apartment. Inside, there wasn't much, just a torn photograph, a small rusted key, and a folded piece of paper that looked like it had aged decades in a matter of days. Nita reached for the paper first. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The handwriting was familiar. Definitely Zara's. The note was brief, hurried, almost panicked. If you're reading this, you're in danger. Do not trust the building. The key opens the basement. That's where it all began. That's where it ends. Nita stared at the note, her mind racing. The basement? She hadn't even realized the building had one. There were no signs, no mention of it from the landlord or anyone else. Why would Zara hide this? Why hadn't anyone else mentioned it before? The photo caught her attention next. It was a group shot, blurry, faded, but one face stood out immediately. Her landlord. He looked younger, smiling, standing in the middle of a group of tenants. And right beside him was Zara. Only, her face had been scratched out. Deep cuts across the paper as if someone had done it in a fit of rage. Another person in the photo had a similar mark. A man Nita didn't recognize, but something about him felt familiar. Then she remembered. He was the man from one of her dreams, always standing in the corner, watching. She grabbed the key and tucked everything back into the box, suddenly aware of how loud the silence in her apartment had become. The air felt heavier now, almost angry. The walls groaned faintly, like the building was waking up, or watching her. The next morning, Nita asked the landlord casually about the basement. His smile twitched. "No basement," he said flatly, and then quickly changed the subject. But later that day, while pretending to take out the trash, she noticed a small metal door near the back of the building, half covered in ivy and rust. No handle, just a keyhole. She waited until after dark. When the building had gone quiet, she returned with Zara's key. It slid in smoothly. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase leading into pitch blackness. She hesitated, flashlight in hand, heart pounding. Then, just as she was about to step inside, her phone buzzed again. Another message. "He knows you're going down there." Nita looked around. No one. But her instincts screamed danger. She climbed down slowly, one step at a time. The air grew colder, damper, heavier with every breath. The walls were lined with old concrete and strange markings she couldn't recognize. And then she saw it. Another door, wood, burned around the edges, and written across it, in something that looked far too fresh to be old, was her name, spelled perfectly. Nita's breath caught as she stared at the burned wooden door with her name scrawled across it. The basement was silent, the kind of silence that made your ears ring. She stepped closer, flashlight flickering again, barely holding back the growing panic inside her. She didn't understand how anyone could have known her name, how it ended up here, in this hidden place that hadn't seen light in years. She pressed her hand to the door. It was warm, not just warm, pulsing, almost like a heartbeat. Before she could change her mind, she pushed it open. The hinges groaned, the sound echoing down the stairwell behind her. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single swaying bulb. The space looked like an old storage room, but the walls were covered with newspaper clippings, photos, and handwritten notes pinned up like a conspiracy board. Every article was about missing people. Zara, Rayhan, Yasir, others too, all of them connected to the same building. And then she saw it, the landlord's name, repeated in every file. His real name wasn't what he told her. He had changed it over the years. He had lived here longer than anyone knew. And he wasn't just the landlord. He was part of it, part of whatever was tied to this building. Maybe the cause, maybe just a pawn, but always present. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed behind her. Nida turned just in time to see the landlord standing at the top of the stairs, eyes cold and lifeless. "You weren't supposed to find this," he said quietly. "Now it won't let you leave." But just as he stepped forward, the light bulb above them burst, plunging them into darkness. A cold wind swept through the room, and for a moment, Nita heard a voice. Not the landlord's, not her own. It was Zara. "Run!" Nita darted past him, stumbling up the stairs, gripping the box tightly. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. The apartment building behind her groaned as if alive, the door slamming shut on its own. She thought it was over, but later, as she tried to catch her breath on the sidewalk, her phone buzzed once more. A photo of her, standing in her apartment, taken just seconds ago. Nita stared at the photo on her phone, her hands trembling. It showed her standing in the apartment just moments ago, except she hadn't been there. She was sure of it. Her breath caught, and for a second, the street around her felt distant and unreal, like the building hadn't let her go completely. She deleted the image, but the unease stayed with her. The next day, Nita packed her things and left without saying goodbye. She didn't need closure, she needed distance. The building, the landlord, even Zara, it all felt too connected to something much older, something she was never meant to uncover. She reported everything to the police anonymously, left copies of Zara's notes and the files from the basement at their doorstep. She knew they probably wouldn't believe her, but maybe someone else would look into it. Maybe someone stronger, someone who hadn't already been pulled in so deep. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to a kind of normal. Nita moved into a new apartment in another part of the city, surrounded by noise, people, and light. She chose it on purpose, somewhere alive. But even there, the shadows sometimes seemed too still. She double-checked her locks more often. She kept her phone face down at night, and she never ignored strange sounds anymore. She thought about Zara often, about how brave she must have been to try and fight whatever evil had taken hold of that building. Nida hadn't saved her, but she had escaped, and maybe that was enough. For now. One evening, as she sat by the window watching the city lights flicker, her phone buzzed again. Just a notification this time, a software update, nothing strange. But still, her heart skipped. That feeling, like something just out of view, hadn't gone away. She turned her phone off. Some things, she realized, don't end when you leave the building. Some secrets follow you, especially the ones that were never meant to be found.